to the newest installment of Marshall Law, a program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. And because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. Which is the perfect introduction to Mr. Marshall Chriswell. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you, Todd?
Wonderful. It's good to have you with us today.
Nice to be here.
All right. So I want to talk about something that we actually had the district attorney on last week, and he was talking about things that are taking place in the law community now because of the pandemic that just might be something that becomes more of a norm in the future. One of those things he mentioned was Zoom hearings, virtual hearings, off-site type hearings where a defendant or even the attorneys involved might be at a remote location and not physically in the courtroom. And I assume you concur that's going to be something that we hear more and more of as a common thing, isn't it?
I think so. I can tell you that personally, I hope that we get back to a place where the vast majority of hearings are occurring in the courtroom in a normal setting. But I do think these video conference hearings and depositions and things are very, very helpful, for folks that can't get out for one reason or another, or are unavailable to come to the court, or have an issue or geographically not close to the court. Yeah. I think it's really set us on a path to be able to conduct those hearings, and I think that's great. But me personally, I hope we get back in the courtroom.
Yeah. Well, that being the case, that we could have much more of this happening in the future, probably are some ABCs we need to go over, and they might be a little bit different from if you were actually appearing in a courtroom. So let's look at the idea of if you want to call it a Zoom hearing, we can go ahead and call it that. If you're having a Zoom hearing as opposed to an in-person type of hearing, there have to be some differences in the way things are conducted, don't there?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to think about. I have a meeting with my client, or a phone call with my clients every time we're going to have one of these Zoom hearings, just for the purpose of kind of nailing down the do's and don'ts of video conference hearings and getting them prepared for that. So, just to start off with, you need to make sure that your technology's right. You've got to have a reliable, stable internet connection. If you don't have that, you need to make arrangements to call in and participate in the hearing by phone rather than video conference, which is not optimal. It's important for the judge and the other attorneys and people involved to be able to see everybody. So, but if you don't have that reliable, stable internet connection, then that's an option. You want to make sure you have the program, whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever program the court is using. Vast majority of them are using Zoom. I think everything I've done has been by Zoom. But you want to make sure you have that program downloaded. You want to make sure you've tested your sound and video. You want to make sure that your camera, the camera that you're using is set up properly, so that the judge doesn't spend 45 minutes looking up your nose. Things like that.
Yeah, finding out if you've trimmed up there.
Yeah.
Well, appearances, generally, I would assume, in person, you want to appear in a nice, respectful way. You want to be well-dressed. You want to be clean, have the hair combed and shaved if you're a shaver. But I would assume as well that appearances are important for making your court appearance on a Zoom as well.
That's right, and I tell my clients that you need to treat this, even though you're going to be in your home or some other location where you physically you're gonna be a little more comfortable than you would be in the courtroom. You need to treat this as though you were in a courtroom, and so you should dress as if you were going to be appearing in court. You're right, the grooming and things like that are certainly important. And you want to act like you're in court. And some judges have actually put out formal rules for, most courts have put out formal rules for these remote hearings. And they say specifically, hey, no eating, no drinking during your testimony. If you're not testifying and you want to take a sip of water or something, sure, and that would be permitted in a courtroom as well. But you're not going to sit there and eat lunch. You're going to want to avoid any kind of distractions for yourself and for the judge and the attorneys. Make sure that you've arranged for child care and you don't have kids running in and out of the room. Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, can I have a snack? That's not appropriate. You're not going to be petting your dog. Those kinds of things that absolutely wouldn't happen in the courtroom that are totally distracting for everybody during a hearing.
And someone sitting off camera who wants to chime in as well. Yeah,
and most of the time what I'm seeing is the judges take care of that right up front. Though if you're going to be testifying during a hearing, they're going to put you under oath, and they're going to ask you, is there anybody in the room with you? And if you say yes, that there is anyone, they want you to move to another location or ask those people to move out of that room so that nobody's distracting you, but also so that no one is coaching you or trying to elicit certain testimony from you whenever you're giving testimony to the court.
Now, see, I think of things that pop up in my mind, but you look at things from an attorney's perspective. What are some of the other bits of advice you want to give somebody as they head into a Zoom hearing of some sort?
Well, you've got to remember, just like in a courtroom, that the hearing is being transcribed by a court reporter, which folks forget about whenever you're giving testimony or you're speaking in court. And it's really, really important for the court reporter to be able to get down everything that's said to create the record. So what's really important in the Zoom hearings is that you never try to talk over one another. If two people are speaking, the Zoom software basically, I think what happens is whoever's louder, that's the voice that it's going to pick up. So a lot can get missed if two people are talking at once. So you really have to be cognizant of waiting for your turn to speak and letting, if you need to say something, obviously, letting the court know that you need to talk, but not talking over one another.
Is it more difficult for you as the attorney who is also on Zoom to offer guidance, advice to your client, and to also say, okay, you need to know when not to talk?
Yeah, just like a regular hearing. Another thing is that normally if I'm in a courtroom, I'm sitting at counsel table with my client next to me, and I will always give my client a notepad. If they haven't brought anything, I'll give them a notepad and a pen. And if they need to communicate with me during the hearing, say the opposing party is testifying and has just told a giant lie, okay, and my client knows it because they're familiar with the situation, and they want to jump out of their seat and whisper in my ear and say, no, that's not true. No, you need to write it down on the pad. You can't really do that whenever we're in remote locations, so we need to set up a way and whether it's through the chat function in Zoom, which I don't prefer, it can be by text message or using Slack or some other instant message program that both of us would have access to. But we need to figure that out, and you can't communicate with me during the Zoom hearing, and often we need to.
Of course, the degree of the hearing. Obviously, I don't think we're talking about trials here, so. That would play into how many people you're going to have on your list of people who might be testifying. But multiple witnesses, I would assume, would be a bit more of a tricky thing to get through.
Yeah, and they are holding trials by Zoom, not jury trials in Indiana County, thank goodness, but there are trials, and I've done 2 or 3 day long Zoom trials, and it definitely is tricky with the witnesses. When you're in the courthouse, I subpoena my witnesses. They sit out in the waiting area, and I call them in as I need them. With Zoom, we've got to kind of get everybody lined up at the right times and calling in, and everybody has access to the program and all those things. So it's definitely makes it a little more complicated.
When we think about Zoom proceedings, hearings, or whatever it might be before a court, how much of that is left to the plaintiff or to the defendant's discretion as to whether or not it takes place via Zoom or in person?
If the parties would agree, that they didn't want the hearing to be by Zoom, then and in a civil matter, you can agree to continuances as long as the court will agree. So you could agree to continue the matter until the court is open for in-person hearings. But most people want to get things resolved as quickly as possible. The court system does not move quickly to begin with. So, and we don't know exactly when we're going to be back for in-person hearings. So, so really, if you want to get your matter adjudicated, you don't have a whole lot of choice as far as we're doing these things by Zoom, and it makes things more difficult. But it's just what we got to do right now.
Is a Zoom proceeding more likely in a civil case or a criminal case, or is there really no difference?
I think they're more likely in civil cases. I don't do criminal law, but I know that some of the criminal proceedings are still proceeding in person, and just about everything on the civil side is being done via remote hearings via Zoom.
And in that civil arena, is there one type of case or another? I'm thinking family law, divorce proceedings, as opposed to property disputes. Is there one type or another that seems to be more prevalent or more conducive to a Zoom hearing?
Actually, I found that mediations, child custody mediations, those have been held via Zoom. And again, it's not perfect, and sometimes you have unrepresented parties in those cases, so they have a lot of times there's difficulty there with getting them access and things. But I've found that those child custody mediations have been fairly efficient, and we've been able to get things done in a pretty. I don't want to say quickly, but efficiently. We've been able to move through those and get agreements, and people seem to be a little more comfortable when they're at home and having a conversation in a mediation type setting, rather than being actually in court for that. So I think those have gone fairly well.
He is Marshall Chriswell, and if you want to know more about whatever your legal matter is, what do people need to do to get in touch with you?
You would give me a call at 724-465-5826. Come see us. Chriswell Law Offices is at 655 Church Street here in Indiana. It's the old R&P building up on the 3rd floor. And you can go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
Beautiful. Marshall, thanks so much for being with us again.
Hey, Todd, thanks a lot. Take care.
You too. Bye now. You too. Bye now. You too. Bye now.